Patterson here, and boy, our good friend Dion visits us this episode, talking about his latest album, The Rock and Roll Philosopher. We also talk about his book too, but wow, this one touched me deeply. This is the second interview I've done. I don't know which one we'll post first, but not to get too much into my personal life, but I lost my dad on Sunday. And my dad was a big fan of Dion's. In fact, he was one of two people I've interviewed that he was impressed with. Everybody else is like, oh, how nice. But when I said Dion and my last interview with him, he was like, wow, Dion, you got to talk to Dion. So I had relayed that story to Dion through his publicist as we were setting this up, and he talks about that. You'll see this conversation in the interview, of course. But this is a great album that backs up a great book, his autobiography. I would encourage you to buy both. Don't stream, don't rent, buy. Please support our artists. And Dion's certainly worthy of that because of all the phenomenal music that he's contributed to the soundtrack, not only of our youth, but of our life. And while you're listening to this, would you mind just going ahead and hit like? Because I know you're going to like it. If you're not already a subscriber to this channel on whatever platform you're watching or listening to this on, would you please hit subscribe? I don't think it's going to cost you anything extra, but it sure helps out Boomerocity. And please share this interview with anyone you think that might appreciate it and enjoy it, because this one's a great one. So without any further ado, here is my third interview with the great Dion. Until next time, this is Randy Patterson with Boomerocity. Take care.
Yo.
Hello, Dion.
Can't see me. Where am I?
Unless that's a real tight close up on your shirt or something. Good to see you again.
Wow.
Yeah, it has been a while. Where you clicking in from home?
Yeah, I got a lot going on, so I might have to run, and I don't know. I might have to do something, but I'd be back.
Okay.
So I got
Man,
I got people knocking on the door and stuff. So be just patient with me.
Not a problem at all. Well,
Well,
I appreciate you taking the time, man. I really do.
I read your email. That's sweet with your dad. Sorry to hear about that.
I tell you, man, that was he was like I'd say he goes, who are you interviewing this? Like, oh, Billy Gibbons, or the guys from the Stones, or so as you and Dean Martin's daughter. You two are the only two out of everybody I've talked to that he got excited about. And
Of course.
so thank you for being you and putting a smile on my dad's face. That was a highlight, big time highlight there. So
Oh, thank you. Yeah, pleasure.
So,
That's great. That's great. Well, you ushered your father into heaven. You're just into the vestibule of heaven.
yep.
Yeah, you're stuck with him, and you're a good son, and it's I'm glad I could be a little part of that.
Yeah, well, music's a big part of everybody's life, and when he can, to hear your name and flash back to the, 50s and 60s, and and he and my mom were a big part of my interest in music. I mean, Dad wasn't so much whatever was on the radio, but he knew what he liked on the radio. You, Pat Boone, Elvis, and those were, he would turn up the radio when your songs would come on. And Mom, of course, I got her record collection. So,
how old was your dad?
He turned 89 back in June.
Oh, wow. Cool.
He and the reason why I mentioned Dina Martin is when I interviewed her almost 6 years ago, just before the shutdown. we got to talking about our dads. It turned out her dad and my dad had the same birthday, years apart, but they shared the same birthday. So it was
What,
it was kind of a
what,
cool thing there. Yeah.
what month? What month and date?
June 7th. Dad was 1936.
Okay.
So
Yeah. Okay.
so anyway, great memories, and you're a part of the soundtrack of his life. So very
Oh, that's
cool,
good.
very cool.
Where did he
But
grow up?
right here in Tennessee, I'm in Sevierville, but he was born in Madisonville, Tennessee, and then we were out in Arizona for, gosh, well over 20 years. That's where I pretty much grew up. I was born here in East Tennessee, but grew up in Arizona. And then when they retired, he and mom, they come back here to the Smoky Mountains near where they were both born. And that's where they retired. Mom died almost 8 years ago, and dad just passed. So,
Yeah. Well, that's a good run,
yep.
Listen, at my age, I'm like thinking, no, I want it to be a longer run, but I'm 86, So, it sounds like a short time for me, but I mean, we all think we're going to live forever. We're not. We're not going to get out of here, but I like your wallpaper.
Well, I do
What?
too, man. It's a great album cover, and I love the music on there. Tell me about that. How did that all come together for you? What drove this album? And I know it's probably tied in with the book and stuff, but tell me about it. What got this thing rolling?
Well, what got it rolling is the book has like 160 photos, but the Audible book has like it has induction speeches, like Lou Reed. You actually hear his voice, or Stevie Van Zandt, or Dick Clark, or whoever it is. I put in I put in a lot of music. I think maybe there's 60 songs in the Audible book,
Wow.
underlying some of the stories, entering some of the stories, to just create a mood for like a certain vignette, you know, and coming out of it, or whatever inspired me, I just rolled with it. So after I did that, I thought, I got so inspired. I was I was coming up with songs that I hadn't listened to in years, and just thought, didn't you change? Haven't heard that in you, or running close behind you. There's songs I done I did for Warner Brothers maybe in the early 70s, or then I went back to the mid 60s and took a song from uh, what's that? The title of that? A Kicking Child, and I picked songs that were unreleased and I threw them in there. Um, there's a song called "I've Been Burnt So Many Times,"
Yeah.
uh, uh, you know, uh, and so I had all these ideas, and so I said I just ought to, I should put a the company, my company came to me and said, why don't you do companion to the book? Because they love the Audible so much. So I thought, what I should do is just put 16 songs on this album that I would go out and perform in concert from
Yeah.
beginning to end. Now that that changes every day in my mind, but I got pretty but I got pretty close. I
Hmm.
thought, and I started, and this is interesting because what really got me going is I was talking to a group of junior high school. What do they call that now? Middle school, or it's like
I
four.
think it depends on which school district. Yeah.
Well, they're a bunch of 14-year-olds. So I'm 14, and I'm talking to an auditorium of 14-year-old kids. I'm sitting in the auditorium on a stool with my guitar, and I'm telling them stories. So I said, I said, every time I do an album, I can't help myself. I always write a song that hurls me into a place of this, of a place of bragging rights, of but the songs are actually uh, songs that I grew up with, like Muddy Waters were, I'm the Hoochie Coochie Man. I'm the man. And I grabbed onto this when I was very young, that I found out that there was a genre in the rock and roll and in the blues called bragging rights, you
Mhm.
know, and I started with the Wanderer. I'm the Wanderer. I go from town to town. I make love to all these girls, but they tell on themselves in a way, like the Wanderer kind of tells on itself. They have an underlying kind of uh, a theme where the person sees what he's doing, and he knows it's like King of the New York Streets. Uh, People call me the scandalizer. The world was my appetizer. I turn girls into, I turn, what is it? I turn gangs. Yeah, people call me the scandalizer. The world was my appetizer. I turned gangs into fertilizer. I'm king of the New York streets. But at the end, it says, I was wise in my own eyes. I awoke one day and I realized this attitude come from cocaine lies. So these songs tell on itself. Then I have one called I Got the Cure. I have one called um, Don't You Want a Man Like Me? I have one called, um, well, the one that I played for the kids. I told them about that. I grew up with these gangsters across the street. When I come out of my apartment, George's Bar and Grill was on the corner and Tally's Pool Room, and they had all these wannabe gangsters, that had this attitude with the suits and the zoot suits. And I grew up to James Cagney and Humphrey Bogart and a lot of these guys who played gangsters like Al Capone and John Dillinger and Lucky Luciano with the machine guns. So I said I wrote a song called I'm Your Gangster of Love, so and I played the song for them and they went out of their minds. These kids loved the song Gangster of Love. And I said, it's kind of these songs are like over the top. I said, and I always write one of them on, maybe it seems like on every album, I have to go to this particular place where I have to write a bragging right song, something that's over the top. It feels so good coming out of your mouth. It's like, it's so much fun to be this guy, this character, to inhabit this character that's singing this song. And of course, it's satire. If you get
Mhm.
satire, you get me. You know what I mean? So, but the response that I got to "Gangster of Love," I'm your gang, was so incredible. These kids they went nuts. I said I recorded this song, but it's not in the place. It's not living in the place that I want it to be. So I redid it, and I opened this album with it
Mhm.
uh, closer to how I sang it to them. If you stripped all the music away, you'd have me and the guitar, and they just loved it. So I thought, man, if they liked it, I just got, I used it, of course, in the Audible book, but I just said I'm going to open the album with it because if they like it, it's just got to land with other people.
That I mean, You saying that reminds me of a few years ago, Paul McCartney talking about his grandkids coming up to him and, talking about Guitar Hero and stuff. And he was like, "Hey, we wrote this stuff," and both of your comments always strike me about how the music of our generation, the soundtrack of our youth and lives, there's just something about it, Dion, where I mean, yeah, there's great music still coming out, but it just seemed like the biggest bulk of it in the history of mankind was what you and your peers were putting out, probably up and through the early 80s, thereabouts. What do you think it is? I mean, do you think it's how you were raised and your peers were raised that caused you to write those kinds of lyrics and still write those kind of lyrics that just stick with people? I mean, that's the conclusion I come to. What, am I too far off?
No, I think you're spot on. The way I define it is two things. One, there was a renaissance with the 50s, with the late 50s and the 60s. It was a renaissance. Great music was popular music, was commercial music. Commercial music was great music. It was one and the same in the late 50s and 60s. It was it was one and the same. You had Chuck Berry and you had Fat Domino and Little Richard and Jerry Lee Lewis and the Everly Brothers and Roy Orbison. You had all these great doo-wop groups. I mean, could this be magic? Just this beautiful stuff. And going into the 60s, you had Springsteen and John Fogerty and just I can go on and on and on. The Beatles. You had great music was commercial music. Not so much now. Now you have a different station for everything. You want popular music, you go here. You want commercial music, you go here. You want artistic stuff, you go here. And the other thing is that um, so that's one of the things. And when we were writing, of course, in the 60s, you had all those, you know, the the artist songwriter, uh, and I read books by Bruce Springsteen. I read books by Bob Dylan, Lou Reed. I could go on and on, but they all say, most of those guys say, I wasn't the greatest guitar player. I wasn't the greatest looking guy. I wasn't the greatest singer. I had to write great songs. So we in the 50s, I had guys behind me like Doc Pomus, who was a little guy who was disabled. He walked around with crutches. He must have been about 4'5", and he was a blues singer. And Mort Schumann, who was like 6'5" and a tall guy who just didn't have the look for that time or something. He became a great star in France, but uh, we had Carole King writing songs. I wrote songs with Carole King sitting on the same piano bench, like this little girl, and I had, right across the street from my company when I was with Laurie or Columbia was 1650, where Neil Sedaka and Barry Mann and all these, writers who were really writing some great songs. I don't know how that happened. It was a renaissance, it was incredible. Some of the songs they wrote, these people. And there's a difference between just writing a song and writing a great song. And what
Agreed.
you're talking about is we could go through it right now, but there were great songs. I mean, even in the Great American Songbook, we
Yeah.
were coming off of that. So we, that was incorporated into a lot of the stuff that I did, even to the extent that I would use like an intro to Runaround Sue. The what do they call that? A prologue or a I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, that slow beginning, and then you go into the song. You set up the song. I forget what they call that in
A prelude.
a prelude in the 40s. They
Yeah.
so I came off of that stuff with Al Jolson and Louis Prima. And Louis Prima would be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame if he didn't sing Italian songs. Because, I mean, come on, Sam Butera was one of the greatest rock and roll sax players you could ever
Hmm.
think. And the guy was unbelievable.
Do you think, because I mean, I've talked about this about generations and not just music, but the differences from, say my parents' generation to my generation to what we've done with, my kids' generation, so on and so forth. It seems to me, be curious to get your thoughts on this. Mom and dad's generation, your generation was, born right there at the Depression and the tail end of that into World War II. So there was, rationing, hardship, rough and scrabble type of thing, being raised by the greatest generation, that kind of stuff. That adversity that fueled thought and creativity in the music, whether it's here on our side, on the streets of New York or in the fields of Tennessee, or you look at the British invasion that took place. I mean, most of those guys, man, they remember the rubble of World War II. It just seems like all of that seemed to, whether directly or indirectly, I think was foundational to the music from back then. Do you agree with that, or could you add to that?
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. The longing in relationships, the romance, the drama, the courage, that even Hank Williams. I mean, I was, that's what got me into the business. The hillbilly Shakespeare. He wrote songs that was uh, just so profound to me. I mean, they were simple but profound. Even Luke the Drifter, he taught me how to live through that album. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
his recitations, be careful of stones that you throw, and the funeral. He talked about racism. A guy was unbelievable. And I'm a kid from the Bronx, maybe somebody from Tennessee or, Mobile or it's a natural thing to pick up on that, but not in the Bronx. Nobody knew who Hank Williams was. No one knew who he was. Uh, Only in my household. I come upon him by an accident, I think. I just heard him coming out of the radio uh, from a country station that came out of Newark, New Jersey, called the Don Larkin Show. He was a guy who was in the army, fell in love with country music, and started this country music station in Newark. And I happened to have it on one Sunday when I remember the day when I was like, I must have been about 10 years old. And I heard Honky Tonk Blues coming out of the radio. I never forgot it. It just blew my, it hurled me into a place of enchantment. And my whole life, Randy, my whole life has been trying to create a song and transmit it to people to bring them into the same enchantment that I felt when I heard that. It just blew my mind. And I felt something that it hurled me into a place of transcendence to a higher reality. I wasn't here anymore listening to my parents argue or the school. I wasn't into, I didn't see any of that. It hurled me, it brought me to a place that only Hank Williams could take a 10-year-old to. And, and I've never been the same. and I'm easy to understand. I'm still doing that, trying to create that song to
Hmm.
to help people to do what maybe Hank Williams and Jimmy Reed did for me.
Hmm.
Hank Williams, I wanted to communicate like Hank Williams and groove like Jimmy Reed.
Well, songwriters would kill to have be a one-hit wonder, let alone write several great songs. And you've done that. I mean, that's a testament to your skill and your creativity, your art. But gosh, to write one like Abraham Martin and John, which you've redone, it's on this album. Even though the people, you sing the same about the same people, the feeling of that song transcends to today, don't you think? And if you feel that it does, why do you think, even though we're talking about people that were killed, almost 60 years ago, why does that still resonate with people today of a younger generation, not just us who are still around, but younger generations?
Well, today there's a funny thing that's happening today. People seem to latch on to a person's faults, where they're flawed. They look at where they're flawed and they amplify that. They kind of magnify their flaw. This person did this. They're disgusting. And you could do that with everybody. In the generation, that I came from, we looked at the bigger picture. Everybody's flawed. St. Augustine had a child out of wedlock. John Kennedy maybe had orgies in the White House. Martin Luther King maybe was a womanizer. This one had that. Everybody had something, but who wants to talk about that? You want to look at the bigger picture and look at what these men did, and that's what the song is about. It's about a state of love that does exist. I say it at the beginning of the video. It's about a state of love that does exist, and it's for us to work at it and make it real in the world. And that's what the song is about. It's not a political song, although, because it's about two Democrats and two Republicans. But it's it's truly about looking not so much at our flaws, because if somebody, if I didn't know me, I'd be impressed. I mean, you know what I mean? I know me. So we're all, we're born like that. I know we're all created in God's image and likeness, but we're flawed because, the garden, we want to run our own lives. And, we need a higher power to get over on these defects of character. And and that's what that song is about. It it's a song of transcendence. I love that kind of stuff where you look at people and I see them with rose-colored glasses. I don't want to hear the bullshit about them. It's easy. You could get into that all day long with people. Who cares? I don't really care, um, unless it's I mean, I'm not saying I ignore it. I could say yes, but the point being, I look at the bigger picture. And a lot of these people, like saints, all the saints, you would think they were perfect people. They're not. They're only like great sinners who are in need of the grace of God, who were aware they were in need of the grace of God. Like Saint Paul, or Moses killed somebody, David killed some. Come on, and we could look at these people uh, all day long like that. But I'd and again, I don't want to live in what would you call that, in fantasy world. Uh, I know that they were flawed and but I look at the bigger picture. That's the point. And that's what that song is about.
you, your album cover, your book, I mean, your album title, your book title, talks, the rock and roll philosopher. You were involved in contemporary Christian music back in the 80s. During that same time, you had Chuck Girard, who recently passed away. He had an album or a song called Rock and Roll Preacher. Faith obviously factors very heavily in your life and often in your music. At this stage of your life and career, how much of that with that as a backdrop, what would you say to people when it comes to life, faith, a standard to live by, a foundation to stand on?
To me, it's everything. You know, I had a friend once, he said, "What does that have to do with anything?" I said, he said, what does God have to do with it?" I said, "Everything." You know, uh, he said, because he was talking about you reinvent yourself, you recreate yourself. I says, "No, I never created myself in the first place. I didn't want me to recreate myself." I said, "I'm just evolving, I'm maturing, I'm developing. I was an acorn, now I'm an oak tree." I called the book Rock and Roll Philosopher because a philosopher is a lover of wisdom, and your philosophy, it's perfectly designed to produce the results you're getting in life. And yeah, so it has everything to do with it. It's the center of my life. I had a I've been clean and sober 57 years. I came into a spiritual 12-step recovery program in 1968, and they and they gave me they put me on this road, these 12 steps, which were gleaned from the disciplines of Saint Ignatius of Loyola, and they're designed to lead you into union with God. And I, that's what happened. I was working these steps and it led me right. I had a spiritual awakening. I mean, literally, Christ showed up on a road one day when I was jogging. I said a prayer. I uttered a prayer. I said, "God, it would be nice to be closer to you." And this beautiful, ethereal, very brilliant, sudden, profound spiritual awakening. I've never been the same since. And the whole world changed. Again, I had that I had that experience. I was hurled into a place of enchantment, in a place of I knew I was loved by certain people, but I never felt it. That day I felt it, how loved we all are by our Creator. So to me, it's central.
Yeah, agreed.
Put it this way, I have a gift to write songs. I have a gift. I feel like I'm a great rhythm singer. It's a gift. And if you have a gift, there's got to be a gift giver.
Yep, totally agree. Totally agree. It's I'm glad you said all that. That's very cool. What saw this question asked to someone else, and I thought it was a great one, especially in this case with this new album. When you think about the young guy from the Bronx who sang "Teenager in Love," what do you think that young Dion would think or say if he could hear this new album?
Jeez, you know, I don't know. Looking back, I don't know if uh, my younger self could actually comprehend that. I'd rather look at it from where I am now and look back at it and and kind of because I wouldn't define a lot of the things that I see today. Back then, I wouldn't have a clue. I was just doing everything by instinct.
Mhm.
But I'm impressed. I'm impressed with what I did and what I do. And Randy, I'm not. I'm saying this because I can't take credit for it. It's not like like a bragging thing. It's like I came off at 3 albums. I did this album called Blues with Friends with Joe Bonamassa
Hmm.
and Springsteen and Paul Simon. I did an album called Stomping Ground with Eric Clapton and Mark Knopfler and the great Sonny Landreth. And and I did Girlfriends with Susan Tedeschi and
Hmm.
some beautiful women and great guitarists and great artists. I was walking around one day and I was look I had the albums in my hand because I had to bring them somewhere and I thought, oh my God, I couldn't do this. I couldn't plan this if I tried. I mean, I, how did this happen? I mean, I know I was part of it. I know I wrote the songs. I knew I called my friends to contribute to the songs, but in the end, I was like, I couldn't plan this if I tried. It was like a wave that I was on. It's hard to explain, Randy. I just feel like I'm under the spout where the glory comes out. I'm just,
I love it.
it's like it's like when you're in the groove, when you're roller skating and you just catch the groove, and you're just gliding or sailing or something. I don't know. I'm not but I could imagine catching a wave with a sailboat, and just feel like you're in the pocket.
Yeah, yeah. Are you going to tour or anything to support? I mean, touring's rough, but I didn't know if you planned on doing a series of shows in support of all this, or what are your plans for the next year or so?
Well, my manager was talking about I can do that, but I'm putting together a great band. But I was thinking of doing a residency down here, maybe in Florida at the Hard Rock or somewhere. I haven't really approached anybody with the idea, but uh, I'm thinking of doing something because I know Les Paul did it, and I think it would be fun to do a residency because a lot of people pass through Florida, and I could have a lot of guests, joining the set. Uh, anyway, I'm just riffing here.
Yeah. Well, Dion, we have a Hard Rock here too in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. You need to come and do a residency there. They can put you up in a great luxury cabin, and people come here from all over the world. It's the most visited national park in the country. I think you'd do really well there. And I'd take you to my favorite diner, and we could have some slaw dogs and
Man,
some iced tea. And
I'm ready. That sounds
well, come
good.
on, man, come
That,
on. But
that really sounds good, Randy. No kidding.
I
That
want
sounds.
to see you in person. We've talked several times. I haven't gotten your book yet, and I'm way behind on that, but I want to get it. I would love to have you sign it. And it just, you've always been so gracious and receptive to me talking to you. I know you could talk to a lot of other bigger people and probably do, but to talk to little old me as I'm growing this thing called Boomerocity, it's always I've been honored to talk to you each and every time. And
No, I
um,
appreciate it. No way, I appreciate it.
but uh, but
You know,
I just think you're amazing. When you told me how old you were, I was like, there ain't no way. And just how fit you look, how spry you are, how energetic you are. God's been good to you, man, and I'm glad to see it. but
yeah. Well, when I get to Tennessee, uh, call Bob Merlis. I'd love to. Yeah, I'd love to go to that diner. You make it sound too good.
Oh, hey, I'm not kidding you. It's the diner where, Dolly Parton's from here because I'm right here and Dolly was a mile and a half up the road from me. That's how close I am to it.
I love diners. I love
Yeah.
diners. I love the
Well, this
waitress. You know,
well, this one here, whenever Dolly's in town, I'm told, and I've got it on very good authority, whenever she's in town, she sends out for the famous slaw dogs there at Frank Allen's. And it's inside of a convenience store and gas station. And it's in a newer location than where it first started. But everybody comes from all over the country and they want to try those slaw dogs. And they're good. They're very good. So I'll buy you a slaw dog and we can chat some more. So, well, Dion, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the decades of phenomenal music, especially for my mom and dad, and everything in between. Man, you're an awesome man, and I hope we get to talk again somewhere down the road, and like you just said, maybe have a slaw dog together or something.
Stay well, man. Stay well.
You too, my friend. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Keep rocking.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.